The chance of a military strike on Iran has tripled in the past year. The senior geopolitical analyst Barclays said it's gone from a 5 to 10% to 25 to 30%. Our intel is it's not going to happen until later next year as an October surprise for the 2012 election. And finally, we've got Moscow sees no military component in Iran's nuclear program. No kidding, it's been looked over by the United Nations. This is just a pretext to attack that country. Continuing, Napolitano on CFR. The full video is at Infowars.com. The head of Homeland Security, Mrs. Janet Napolitano, has said that she jokes with elitist over Drudge Report, calling her Big Sis moniker. And she says she's very proud of the fact that she's turned America into a third world cesspit. So that article is up at Infowars.com right now. A few of the other articles we've got, we already knew this. We're not saying Occupy, people protesting Wall Street, are bad. It's just that it was started by George Soros in the White House, and they run it. And here's a WorldNet Daily article. Occupy Nerve Center, staffed by Soros activists, professional radicals caught red-handed running so-called leaderless movement. They always said it was leaderless so they could control it themselves. And finally, I'll have to get this more next week, but Daily Mail, no more talking behind the wheel. Scientists develop a system that can shut down your cell phone while you're driving. Oh, sounds good on the surface, but it's all about everything being pre-tracked and controlled in this technocratic system. And I said finally, but here is finally. We're on our own now. Cameron uses the veto for the first time to opt out of the new treaty to save the euro and give more power to Brussels. That's how countries act as firewalls against tyranny. World government is being established by the bankers of the euro right now, and they're using it to get rid of national sovereignty. And the globalist Cameron has said no in England. We'll continue to follow that throughout next week. Now I want to go to a movie review. We did Clockwork Orange, on Tuesday night, and here on Friday night, I have 8 different clips from an amazing 1964 film, 7 Days in May. Now, it's got globalist propaganda in it, but it shows how the leftists that made this were useful idiots. The evil general that wants to use the NAS, National Alert FEMA system, this was in 64 before that was set up, to take over, he has basically set up the military to use this emergency alert system as a pretext to take over. And he speaks out against the one worlders and the New World Order. So now the idea back then was, because this was true, some generals were going to do a coup against the New World Order communists and bankers. And so they were worried back then. So they used a Smedley Butler type 30 years after he did it. The Marine Corps officer in the fictitious film playing Smedley Butler, basically, to say no to martial law and warn the president. And so that's basically what Mr. Douglas does. And so we're going to go ahead and go to those clips, but I just want to illustrate to you that they just had Dr. Strangelove the year before in 63 exposing government launching a nuclear attack on itself, basically, as a pretext for martial law and global domination. And then another film comes out a year later where they talk about generals using COG or Plan R to take over the government. And so we're going to go ahead and go to that first clip of the Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Paramount Pictures, based on the 62 novel by Fletcher Cannell and Charles Bailey II, 7 Days in May. Here's that first clip.
Lyman lovers!
So there's protesters in America. People are angry. Americans are fighting progressives, but the right winger wants to come save everybody. Of course, now it's the left coming in to supplant free speech. So again, the globalists were coming in to take over America. They knew the military was upset, so they put movies out about right-wingers using a martial law system. Right-wing, left-wing means nothing, but now, in common terms, they're actually implementing all of this, but now the left, in their own labels, is using this system against us. They become what they warned about. Let's go ahead and go to this clip. of Gene Scott's speech excerpts where they basically, well, I mean, the clip speaks for itself. Here it is.
Perhaps patriotism is old-fashioned. Perhaps love of country is outdated. Perhaps even a minute degree of sentiment to one's motherland is to be considered passé. But God help us, and God help our country, if the cynics, the one-worlders, the intellectual dilettantes ever persuade us that these things have passed us by. Because, ladies and gentlemen, patriotism, loyalty, sentiment, they are the United States of America.
So there you go. That's General Scott. I'm not a teleprompter reader. I call it Gene Scott. Another General Scott's speech excerpts. He talks about the threat of one-worlders. He's going to bring in martial law to stop the communist one-worlders. But they're not communists for the little guy. They're the banksters. Let's go to this next clip. It's self-explanatory.
Mr. President, have you ever heard of a military unit known as ECOMCON?
What?
I'm sorry, ECOMCON. ECOMCON.
This is Smedley Butler.
What does it mean?
The archetype warning them.
Abbreviations. It could stand for Emergency Communications Control. Have you ever authorized the formation of any type of secret unit, regardless of its name, that has something to do with the preserving the security of things like television, telephone, or radio?
No, I haven't.
Henderson said an odd thing to me, sir. Something that, well, I can't shake quite loose of. He said they were spending more time training for seizing than for preventing.
You're suggesting what?
I'm not sure, Mr. President. Just some possibilities, what we call capabilities in military intelligence. I'm suggesting, Mr. President, there's a military plot to take over the government. This may occur sometime this coming Sunday.
So you stand by the Constitution, Jakes?
Never thought of it just like that, Mr. President, but well, that's what we've got, and I guess it's worked pretty well so far. I sure don't want to be the one to say we ought to change it.
Neither do I. I remember what Harry Truman said one day, that inside this room, the buck stops.
So again, it's the evil anti-New World Order people that want to overthrow the government using the COG media takeover arm that they'd set up to a certain extent then, but wasn't in place till the 70s. And then now that they've got it, they're saying domestic terrorist, free speech is evil. But that's how they sell it. And again, it's the archetype of the Marine Corps officer saying no. S. Smedley Butler, two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, he was approached during the 30s to make America basically a fascist country and take over. The point is, this has already happened through Homeland Security and the staged terror attacks of 9/11. Now they're just mopping up all the free speech centers and shutting down the final levels of freedom. Okay, let's go ahead with the presidential advisor telling the president that, hey, what's wrong with the military training for this stuff?
Forgive me, Mr. President. But it's flying troops to the big cities in an alert. That seems to be not only logical, but prudent. Obviously, if the Russians struck, we'd need disciplined troops in the metropolitan areas to keep order and prevent complete breakdown.
And at 2:20 tomorrow afternoon, somebody will have thrown a switch at Mount Thunder. General James Scott will be on all 3 television networks, explain to the people of the United States why this particular crucifixion is an act of faith.
Mr. President, what are you waiting for? Fire Scott. Close down Mount Thunder. Declare a state of martial law.
Then where do I stand?
And that's another good point. When different groups try to take over, then the answer is martial law, which is the same thing. So there's a great danger in revolution. And that's the point that's made there. A very sophisticated film. You can rent it on Netflix or buy it at the movie store. The point is you should see 7 Days in May. Continuing here with the clips. We had clip number 5 and number 6 here. Yeah, this is General Scott asked the Marine Corps commander if he'll go along with this or if he stands for the Constitution. And when the Marine Corps commander says, I stand for the Constitution, he says, then you take a vacation. That's basically how the system finds good and evil people. If you're good and they have you answer a questionnaire, they say, oh, you're a good person now. We're going to put you in supply or at, Antarctica. But if you're a corrupt globalist, then they actually bring you in to run operations. Here's that clip.
This country's in trouble, Jiggs. Deep trouble. Now, there are two ways we can handle this. We can sit here on our duffs and ask for divine guidance. Or we can watch, Jiggs. What would your advice be?
Well, sir, we're a nation of laws, of rules. We're military men, so we've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution.
The democratic way.
Yes, sir, the democratic way.
You're right, Jiggs. You're absolutely right. You know, Jiggs, you've been working too hard on this damned alert. You look tired. Why don't you take the rest of the week off?
Unbelievable. Let's continue here. This has always been a threat to our country, folks, and now we're up to the line here. It's really happening. It's not a movie. Here's another clip where the President of the United States confronts General Scott on establishing secret base without knowledge of the President, the budget office in Congress, Iran-Contra, all of that, the black sites, the torture sites around the world. And there's a succession of clips while they debate that. Here it is.
You have used, without my authority, substantial sums from the Joint Chiefs Contingency Fund to establish a base and to train a special unit of troops whose purpose and even whose existence was kept secret from me, from responsible officials of the Bureau of the Budget, and members of the Congress.
And the name of that unit?
You know the unit. Its designation is ECOMCON. You accuse me of having lost their faith and deliberately and criminally shut my ears to the national voice.
I do.
Where the hell have you heard that voice, General? In dark alleys? In secret places in the dead of night? How did that voice seep into a locked room full of conspirators? That's not where you hear the voice of the people, General, not in this republic. You want to defend the United States of America, then defend it with the tools it supplies you with, its Constitution. You ask for a mandate, General, from a ballot box. You don't steal it after midnight.
And then there's a clip where a senator tries to get into the secret base and gets locked up and they get out. Here's a clip of that.
Right now, the government of the United States is sitting on top of the Washington Monument, right on the very point, tipping right and left and ready to fall off and break up on a pavement. There are just a handful of men who can prevent that. And you're one of them. I'm going to tell you the damnedest story you ever heard.
That's all for tonight, Sergeant. You're relieved. I'm taking the civilian in my custody.
I'm sorry, Colonel, but I have orders that the civilian is not to leave the base, sir.
Oh, that's all right, Sergeant. I'm countermanding those orders and escorting the civilian into town.
Well, sir, now, I don't know. Colonel Broderick said that...
Throw those keys over here. Eject that cartridge belt and throw it down on the ground.
Do we have people today that blow the whistle on government corruption? Yeah, Pat Tillman did, and they killed him. Point is, we've got the same problems today, but people blew the whistle inside the ATF and the government shipping guns into Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. We'd be in a lot worse shape today if it wasn't for all those silent people that did their duty. I won't even call them heroes. This idea of doing the right thing, it's not heroic, okay? Doing the right thing is not heroic. It's self-preservation. It's common sense. It's a survival instinct. If you let somebody enslave a bunch of innocent people or kill a bunch of innocent people, then you would allow that to yourself. It's common sense. It's not wimpy to have empathy, to feel somebody's pain. It's normal. It's a human instinct. And it's because we've gotten accustomed to going along with other people's pain as long as it's not us. That's weakened us all. That's where you lose your humanity, your womanhood, your manhood. And I'm not giving mine up. My feelings are my strength, not a weakness like these psychopaths tell us. I want my feelings. I see things and know things they'll never know because I'm tied into the universe. I'm not here to stomp on a bunch of innocents. Let's go to this final clip here. This is the ending. We're going to go to this in a moment. This is the ending of the clip where the general's basically been confronted.
And then we'll see which one of us the United States will follow. This will be delivered at 9.